Hi everyone, we're here now with Ruwanthie de Chickera. She is an award-winning playwright, directress from Sri Lanka who has just been appointed to the Arts Council as a member of it very recently. So tell us about how you think generational structures of what they're interested in terms of narratives and themes when it comes to theatre has maybe evolved since you were younger, passionate about what you did and what you were interested in and what you wanted to write about. How has it changed since then?
Thank you, Talitha. Working with young people in Sri Lanka today has been a very, very challenging but also inspiring experience for me. I currently run a youth ensemble which caters to kids between the ages of 16 and 24 years old. And we meet every Tuesday and we've been running for the last 3 years. And my whole emphasis with them is to teach them to watch life, observe life, and then bring into the rehearsal rooms the things that they feel compelled to write about. And then I give them the tools to do this. It's a process called devising. I must say we have a fantastic time. The conversations are great. I'm really impressed, especially with the evolution that I see amongst young people in their understand their very, very high intelligence, their evolution in terms of gender, gender roles. I see a very interesting approach to relationships, much more open, much more balanced. All of these things give me a great deal of hope. I also have my concerns, and a lot of that is to do with a great unknown, which is the impact of a virtual reality on human beings. And I do feel that this particular younger generation are the litmus test for that. So we've experimented with them. So nobody, neither they nor we, really understand the impact on the self, on relationships, on life, of being engaged almost constantly with your devices. In my experience, I've noticed things that mark this generation as different from previous ones that I've worked with. Previous young people, for instance, attention spans are much narrower. Retention is much shallower. Consistency is sometimes a bit difficult to maintain. So these are the kind of things that I've observed. But in terms of themes and what kids are writing about these days, I think there's a lot of pressure because the world has changed so drastically during this time. There's a lot of pressure to focus a lot on the digital. And sort of everything sort of circles back to that. You know, this what it means to be a young person and to have these different realities, the physical world, the digital world, etc. But I also hope that young people will, while that is important because it is the reality that we live in now, that they will keep returning to some of the universal things about what it means to be young, you know, what it means to feel that you can solve all the problems in the world if you were made president tomorrow. I mean, I remember being young and believing that, you know, what it means for your heart to break for the first time and then the second time, you know, what it really means to feel completely alone. And these are all things that every young person of every generation has grown up trying to understand. And it'll be lovely to have young people returning to those topics as well, and not only seeing everything through the lens of, you know, digital life.
We'll come back to the digitalization of theatre and a lot of creativity surrounding the arts today. But before that, you know, we've noticed that through your work, you generally tend to pick on something really small, but then it goes on to speak for something a lot bigger than that. One of your most recent work, The Children of the Olive Park, is a great example for that. You pick on this little narrative that actually goes on to represent a whole lot more. And I think that's very important because theatre is a tool to to address and mirror a lot of real ongoing conflict, small or big. How do you think theatre impact the general public's perception of real world events that are happening, that have happened?
I think maybe we need to provide people with a bit of a context to Children of the Little Olive Park. So, Children of the Little Olive Park is a book that I have written. I don't normally write prose, and this is the first one that I wrote, and I wrote it in response to what was and still is unfortunately happening in Palestine, which is a genocide against the Palestinians. And I remember it was right at the beginning of this entire conflict, which, as you know, was precipitated by October 7, 2023. I think 2 months into that, just completely, along with millions and millions of people in the world, completely at my wits' end, trying to work out, how will this problem ever be solved, where will it end? I started thinking about how tired I was when people kept saying that this is a very complex problem. And because I didn't really see it as a complex problem at all, I saw it as a very simple problem, and I told myself, I'm going to make this as simple as possible, as an exercise for myself. So instead of thinking of the world stage, I brought everything down to something that might happen at a very domestic level. So, two nations fighting for a land, a country, became two groups of children fighting over a little park. And as I began sort of working on this analogy, it became really clear to me where the problem really lies.
Yeah.
Right? Because the story of the Children of the Little Olive Park is that there is this little park full of one group of children. They call themselves the olive tree children. And then there's an auntie who comes into this park with another child from somewhere else and says, oh, by the way, this child is being bullied really badly in my park, so can I leave him here? And these children go, okay, because that's what the Palestinians did. When the Jews were brought over after the Holocaust in Europe, and they were brought over here and said, they've been treated really badly in Europe. Can you share some of your land with them? The Palestinians, who were essentially shepherds and farmers, said, okay. And look at what has happened now, 75 years later. And look at how even after all of that grabbing of land, right, how still that is not enough. And going back to the analogy of the little park, if children were brought into a park like that and started claiming the merry-go-round, started claiming the sandpit, started, hitting the other children and trying to throw them out of the park, what would any, sensible adult do? They'd say, stop behaving like that, children. You can share this, right? If you're behaving this badly, we need to take you away. You need to learn to live together. Living together, sharing, are things that adults tell children to do all the time. But
they never do it themselves.
They never do it themselves. So it was so clear to me when I wrote this story out how badly behaved the Zionist Israeli movement is being. I mean, when I say badly behaved, I'm using the simplest terms to describe something truly horrific, because we're talking about genocide.
Yeah.
But you bring it down, it's just really entitled, bad, dishonest, horrible behavior. And I felt if writing that story in that manner would sort of rob the people who are shielding behind this sort of thing, saying, oh, this is so complex. We can't talk about it because it's so complex. And I just felt it's really not complex at all. It's very, very simple. What makes it complex is hypocrisy and double standards, right? If you bring up your children in a particular way, you should be able to apply those same rules to your life.
Yeah.
And how you deal with adults. So if you're okay with your child going into a park and beating up other children and taking over their toys, and if you're that kind of parent, then then it makes sense. But you can't do that in one circle, one social circle, and behave contrary in another one. That's just hypocrisy.
Completely agreed. But talking about simplifying things, I'd actually like to talk to you about AI, which we left hanging on a thread at yesterday's panel discussion because time was running out. And what do you think about the new world of AI being incorporated in almost everything, whether that's creativity or even just mechanized working? It's all AI now. And how do you feel about the whole human creativity of the sector of arts declining because of that?
Before we even get to the sector of arts, I think what we really need to kind of never lose sight of is the end game between this AI human sort of journey.
Yeah.
Right? I think the final, if AI is allowed to increase and take over the world in this manner, the only thing that will really happen is that humans will become irrelevant really after a point. First, we are already quite lazy because of convenience.
Yeah.
Right? Because of development, because of technology. We don't use our bodies as much. We don't use our minds anymore. Right? So what is human existence if you are not using your body? You're not really using your mind, right? Then your relationships are not with real human beings. So where are we really headed with this? I don't even think it's about the next script or the job or anything. It's about ethics, and ultimately it's going to be about survival, right? And of course I understand that for markets, for profits, it's fantastic to have human beings just sitting at home, ordering in their food, watching, trash on TVs until their brains and eyeballs just melt.
Yeah.
Right? Probably in virtual relationships with other, with AI, because that can be anything, right? There's no limitations to that.
Yeah.
But I mean, is that the path that we are okay to head down? I mean, where are the ethics? Where are the people thinking about what's going to happen to children? Who's going to bring up babies? Who's going to, who's going to look after children? How are they going to grow up?
Yeah.
I mean, the only good thing about this, I feel, is that maybe people would never get off their backsides to get into war anymore. They become so lethargic and so lackadaisical that they never fight for anything anymore.
That's true.
Right? So maybe that's just the sliver hope, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that we'll be throwing out as well with that. When we realize that we've just become a race or that just cannot be bothered to do anything just because we're just far too lazy or we're unmotivated, where we don't think anything is worth the effort of getting up and doing it. I think that's just death slowly in a soft sofa. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Ruwanthie, tell me about how your experience has been here the last 3 days at the Ceylon Literary and Arts Festival. What has it been like? What was your favorite part of this? Anything memorable, special?
Well, I think I'll have to start off by saying it was absolutely an honor, and then a bit of a riot being on a panel with Nazruddin Shah, Tapatak, and Nimi Haraskama also did a fantastic job moderating that, and with Dinara and Rehan as well. I truly enjoyed that. I was a bit apprehensive because it was a lot of people on one panel. That was wonderful, and I think especially just listening to Nasir and Ratna just talk about their experiences. It's so rare for me as an artist to be able to connect with mature artists like that who are still really working, because in this country we don't see many of those, not the way you see them in India. So that was brilliant. I also just came out of listening to Jerry Pinto.
Yes, yeah.
And I thought he was incredible. I'm very sad that I went to get his book. I saw the last copy.
And someone grabbed it.
Yeah, in slow motion somebody grabbed that before I could. More than anything, it made me really think about not just what he said, but how he was saying it as well. And he was so evangelical, in the best sense of the word, about writing, about language, about falling in love with words and falling in love with poetry. And it made me really think about why we as artists, as writers, we don't try harder to really convert people. You know, and he's the first writer I've ever seen talk like that to audiences, and I think he really touched them. And it's made me think about that, because writers tend to be introverts. I am also a bit of an introvert. I'm a director, so I have to put myself out there. But really, I'd much rather just be, you know, by myself. So that was very interesting, and it's made me rethink about maybe some of the responsibilities of being a creative.
Yeah, that was wonderful to hear. Okay, thank you very much. That was very insightful. We're glad we had you with us today. Yeah.
Thank you, Talita.
Okay.